It's spring week 7 here in Apothecaria, and in this cure period, Mistress Sweetwater heals a most unlikely patient. Hey there, everyone. Welcome to Drawing Expressions. I'm Parz, and yeah, this is another Apothecaria-based episodic story. And yeah, so it's gonna be fun, gonna be good. At least I hope so. You tell me in the comments after you've heard it, of course. No commentary beforehand. Okay. Before we get into anything at all like that, let's kind of roll through the couple of things that I like to go through. Number one is that guidelines bend. Guidelines will always be there. They never break. They never fail. They bend. In the planner and the pantser sections, the planner, it's the same planner, but it's almost like I planned it that way. Wow. Anyways, it's the narration and then the describing of what goes into the creative mixing bowl to make the episode. The pantser section is the discussion section, and today we're going to be talking about a writing tip, something to help your writing become a little more tight and a little more satisfying, and it's going to be playing with the opening and the closing of your episode. But we'll get into that in a few minutes. So let us now breathe and stretch, get ready to get all creative, make sure that we are sitting down nice and solid, our sit bones are good in our chair, we're sitting upright, and now take a nice deep breath in. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold. 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale in. And a stretch. Nothing extreme. There we go. Okay. So yeah, this is week 7. It is a cure week, so we have someone who comes to the cottage, needs to be healed. Let's find out who and how and what and the whole rigmarole, shall we? I think we should. So this is called That Which Giveth, That Which Taketh Away. The days are getting longer, the nights shorter. Nature is drinking up the sunshine, bringing life and activity to the land. Not to say that the land's been dead, far from it, but there's a noticeable difference in tonight's sunset than there was when I first arrived 7 weeks ago. 7 weeks. I can't believe time has gone so fast. And I'm certainly not the same person I was, bumbling into a role that, if I'm being completely honest, would have seemed an insurmountable challenge. And yet here I am. I feel like I'm at peace with things. I know there's more to be discovered, more territory I've yet to visit, more ailments that will need treatment, but I'm at peace with where I am and even who I am. Watching the last of the twilight dim, I felt like I'd been part of a daily ceremony, the changing of the guard from day to night. Oddly satisfying in its way, almost as if the desire to do morphs into the desire to rest. And that, after any day at the cottage, is a feeling I willingly embrace. I'd bank the fire, letting it sleep. It too would be called upon with the new day. Pops's gentle glow as it moved about the cottage, floating where it will or settled on the spirit house, was comforting. Mouse Eyes' usual spot was empty, but that in itself wasn't unusual. He would just as often disappear as reappear. Okay, that's obvious, I guess. What I'm trying to say is that Mouse Eye isn't tied to my side. Wherever he is, I know he's safe. And I hope he's not intrusive or indiscreet. Which brings my thoughts to Roger. Bathing. That was I just don't need to see that much of anyone ever again. Chuckling to myself, and probably I'll be chuckling about it for a very long time, I sat in front of the spirit house, relaxed and breathed, and let the days' memories and labors release. I did wonder, as I sat, if when I sleep I somehow connect with the here yet not here. Is it somewhere you can go, much like up beyond the clouds in Madcap's balloon? Could a voyager find themselves here yet not here? What would that be like? How would it work? Could I package myself up, set myself on the mantelpiece, and end up at Pips's house? Could I go elsewhere? What would that be like? When I start to let my mind wander at night, like I let it just flies off in a direction, and I feel like I'm running after it, again, like Madcap's balloon, I know my sleep will be more active, less restful. I'll have cobwebs aplenty come morning, but maybe overnight I'll garner insights or inspirations or epiphanies. But none of that will come until I let my mind drift off with head on pillow. I close my eyes and doze off. Sleep envelops. And a knock awakens. Mistress? Igor? Pops's glow increased, allowing me to find my clothes and throw them on. Opening the door, I saw Igor's worried face, brows knitted, hands, all three, clenching and squeezing, always in motion. Please come in, take a seat and tell me what brings you here. He did as I invited, and then told me about Richard, Count von Rannoch, vampire, necromancer. He doesn't seem himself, and now he's saying he wants to watch the sunrise. He won't die, will he? I asked. No, but it certainly won't be good for him. Do you want me to tend to him? I'm embarrassed to ask, but yes, please, this is beyond me. I spent some more time asking about his condition, when it had started, noticeable symptoms, and Igor, being not just an assistant but one versed in science and observation, was a wealth of information. As I consulted the old witch's book, Mouse-Eye sat down at the open page. I asked with a glance if he'd heard everything. With a small nod, he indicated he had. With a small shrug, I said I wasn't sure what it was, but tentatively pointed at an ailment description. With a small shrug back, he said my guess was as good as his, so let's run with that diagnosis for now. Or maybe he thought we were talking about something completely unrelated to the visit. Anyway, I thought about a plan of action for the case. I had Princess Toad mucus already, and what is it with so many reagents being slimy and gross? Mixed with cold rust, and luckily I knew where to get some in Heroes Hollow, it'd make a cure for the ailment known as loss of experience. I had no idea how someone so old and knowledgeable as the Count could catch something like this, but it made sense in all other respects. I grabbed the mucus reagent, and a few other things and made ready to go to the dungeon. I wasn't sure if I was more or less comforted that Igor would be joining me, but I figured at the very least he'd make for interesting conversation on the way. Such was not the case. Igor, despite appearances, could walk faster than was comfortable for me. I half-trotted to keep up, not leaving me with much breath for talking. I did manage to ask if the Count knew we were coming. No, but the master will appreciate your expertise when we arrive. From what I'd gathered about the necromancer's temperament when confronted with the unexpected, this wasn't a great idea. I tried to trust Igor's judgment. I'd almost succeeded by the time we entered the hollow. I opted to detour us to the armory, the site of my last cold rust harvest, to gather some before making our way to the Count's rooms. The rusting magical weapons and armor may be of no use to warriors, but it's a treasure trove of cold rust for me. Igor then led us to his master's chambers. It was a quick walk, again mostly because Igor was moving at a speed that would be a near certain ankle twister for anyone else. Maybe he found a way to distill some of the fairy's rat spit so that he could go faster. I felt my mind begin to wander, and I stopped it. This was no place to not pay attention to where you're stepping. Soon enough, we arrived. Igor bade me stay back a couple of paces, to announce me, I guess. I heard, "Master, Mistress Sweetwater is here to see you." "Why? For what purpose? And have you seen my book on theories of the beyond?" "Yes, master. It's on your desk, master. And no, I don't know why the witch is here, master." Ah, yes, the book is here. Very good. And now if only I had my codex handy." "It's also on your desk, master, next to the book." "Ah, yes, so it is. Good. I feel like I'm missing something." "Yes, master. Mistress Sweetwater is here to see you." "Is she? I'm very busy. Have her, As they were talking, Igor reached for my arm, then gently guided me forward. Then another arm reached behind me and gave me a hefty shove forward on my back. I looked up into the eyes of a startled necromantic vampire. I did mention, didn't I, that his behavior when startled isn't exactly carefully considered? Today, however, was different. "Oh, Mistress Sweetwater, right? How unexpected." I turned to look for Igor. He was gone. Yes, I thought I'd check in on you. Check in on me? Why? Has Igor been gossiping again?" No, no. But he did say you were contemplating watching the sunrise, and I thought it'd be lovely to do together." "Did he now? And was I really planning to do that? Well, I'm sorry you came all this way, but I'm far too busy to be gallivanting off. Have you seen my book on theories of the beyond?" As I was about to point it out, I spotted Mouse Eye standing on it, but out of sight of the Count, of course, making danger motions, thumb drawn across the neck, glassy eyes with the tongue lolling, arms crossed in front of his chest making a big X. I walked up to the table, took the book. Somehow Mouse Eye disappeared, maybe as I blinked, pretended to read it, then said, "I think you meant to get it from the library, but you grabbed the wrong one. Let me get the right one for you." As I stepped out of the room, I heard Richard start talking to himself about finding another something or other. Igor was waiting. "Do you see what I mean? He's not right in the head." "Can I use your lab? I'm sure it's loss of experience, but I don't know how he would have contracted it. Unless... Where did this book come from?" "That? I'm not sure. Which is odd. An adventurer did visit a couple of days ago. I was busy in the lab, and I don't pry into the master's business, but I do catalog all the books. This one I've never seen. I wonder if the master bought it. It seems odd that he would, but then again... I wonder if it's a trapped book, like maybe you start to read it and instead of giving you information, it takes it. Does that sound plausible?" People think of necromancers as evil because they work with the dead in death. But this, to turn a book from a giver to a taker, that's real evil." Igor took the book. "I'll examine it while you brew." I just looked at him. You can be so certain and safe while doing it so fast? He looked back at me. You can brew a potion so fast and be certain you and he will be safe? Point taken. He laughed. Anyway, forewarned is forearmed. A few minutes later, we reconvened. We both said, "Is it?" then stopped. I let Igor go first. "Trapped, as you suspected. The book itself is inert. You had to start reading the text in order for the trap to spring." He then looked at me more sharply. "How did you know?" I was about to answer when I heard a mousy voice behind me. "I told her." Igor shot me an appraising look. "That familiar is a keeper if ever there was one. Now, the potion?" I held up the cup holding it. "Will this restore him?" I didn't know, so that's what I answered. "Here's to hoping." He took the cup and entered the Count's study. "Reading is thirsty work. Here's a refreshment." The Count, for his part, was standing in front of a tapestry. But he wasn't actively looking. The body was too slumped, the head not quite square. It was like no one was home. He clearly wasn't reading. He clearly wasn't doing much of anything. But he did take the drink without a word and downed it. And then we waited. The changes were subtle but added up to awareness being reawakened. Then, slowly, he looked at us. Sometimes vampires are depicted with red flames in their eyes. Other times they're shown with wolfish grins and protruding canines. I'd never seen the Count like that. Until this moment. What? The demand was directed at Igor. The new book, master. Where? Disarmed, in the library. The vampire then turned to me. You? I was speechless, frozen. The intensity of that gaze. It grabbed everything I was and blasted it aside. I just stood there, mute. Her, yes, master. Richard, Count von Rannoch, slowly approached me, never breaking eye contact. All I could see was his eyes, and beyond them, the void. He reached down, took my hand, and kissed it. You, which are worthy of the name. I'm indebted to you. My brain slowly dragged its way back. I just brewed a potion. He continued to stare through me. No, you returned me. Aside from your usual rate for the mundane task of brewing a potion, I am in your debt. The silver is a pittance, and you shall not refuse. The more laggard pieces of my mind started to recover. No. The Count's eyes blazed again. Before he could speak, I continued. I will accept that I've done you a greater service than simply treat a condition. And I accept that you feel indebted to me, but it's something I never intend to call. For me, there is no debt. The stare, that terrible stare, continued. But now I was back, aware, fully myself, and I was able to absorb the stare and withstand it, hold it, and even calmly return it. And he laughed. Never let it be said that witches are simply crazy women living in little cottages who mutter over steaming cauldrons. Then he held up a hand. I, for one, have never said such a thing. Others, yes, but not me. Of a sudden, he looked drained. Would you care to sit with me a moment? Apparently I need time to recover. Igor, some tea, please. Yes, master, with pleasure. The Count and I sat. He more reclined. Your predecessor, she warned me once about this, or something similar. You only have to get lucky once. You must remain perpetually vigilant. Oh, the tongue-lashing she'd have given me were she here. He looked deep in thought, formulating what to say next. She was something, you know, a force of nature. She, a witch working with all things from birth to death, and me, a necromancer working with death as birth. He paused. Then, they say opposites attract, but there was no way it would ever work. And then she went to the Imperial City. That stopped me. I didn't think he knew about that Igor had intercepted her letter to him. He saw my facial expression and laughed. Igor's protective, but that doesn't mean I'm ignorant. Your tea, master. Mistress? Thank you, Igor, said the Count. Should I track down the culprit, master? No doubt the poor fool was duped or guillotined. The real perpetrator will have clean hands. So we'll have to be more circumspect in our search. Yes, master. Igor left, and the Count and I talked for a while longer. At some point, I yawned. The Count reacted. Dear me, I just realized what time it is. You must be exhausted. Shall I have Igor prepare a guest room for you? It was tempting, but really all I wanted was the peace of my own cottage and the safety of the land surrounding me. So I declined, and soon after, headed out. On the way out, two things happened. One was that I passed by the silverleaf outcropping and gathered some. And then, remembering this unlucky fellow who'd bled to death trying to harvest it, I gathered some old blood from near him. Show me a witch who doesn't harvest reagents when they have the chance, and I'll show you, not a witch, but a crazy woman living in a cottage muttering over a steaming cauldron. Ha ha! I still can't believe he said that. The other thing that happened is that while I was walking past the jail cells and paying them no mind, I heard a poorly stifled sneeze. No, it couldn't be. I stopped and looked, and then I saw a figure huddled in a cell trying to hide. Show yourself, I said. I was calm, I was cool, I was collected, and I had a very interested vampire relatively close at hand if things went really badly. Hello? It said. He, I amended. He said. Let me guess. You gave a necromancer a book, probably not willingly, and now you are stuck here, scared and not knowing the way out. I did what? The panic in his voice spoke volumes. He didn't know what he'd done. Please, miss, I woke up here. I don't know where here is, but it isn't where I want to be. I won't hurt you. You're safe. Come on out and I'll show you how to get out. It took more convincing than that, but he did eventually join me. I knew the way pretty well by this point, so it was a quick and easy journey to the exit. The feel of the nighttime air felt so much better than the dungeon's stagnancy. Oh, thanks heavens, I'm out. Here, miss, this is yours. He shouted as he dropped a pouch at my feet and ran off. I picked it up, felt the weight, and heard the clink of coins. I'd count it later. My main thought in that moment was the hope that he'd find his way home okay. As for me, I went home, but instead of going to bed, I sat outside and waited. It didn't feel like a long time, but it gave me time to decompress, to process, to wonder, and to eventually watch the sun rise. And that is the end of the episode. Okay, so after reading a story such as that, I think it only appropriate that we breathe and stretch. What do you think? Okay, here we go. Deep breath in. And stretch. Ooh, little pops. Okay. So, let's talk about how this episode got put together, right? We've got the creative mixing bowl. We have our 3 elements, and the first one is the prompt guidebook. Okay, so here we go. It is time for that time to do your screenshot right there. And 3 and 2 and 1, and here we are. Okay, so let's do a little bit of a dive on a couple of these bits and pieces. Okay, so the first thing to talk about is the ailment. Loss of experience. The timer is 4, so not a lot of time to go in and do a lot of actions, but just because there's only a few actions doesn't mean we can't still have a lot of really good story, right? We can have the actions interspersed into all of this. So, the details on loss of experience. The guidebook describes it as saying that those afflicted will feel sluggish and morose as if they've lost a little bit of themselves. So what I wanted to do is translating this for the necromancer, vampiric necromancer. So it felt right, first off, for him to catch this. You know, he's been in the story a couple of times, and a little mischief maker, you know, attacked the cottage a few episodes back. So yeah, we had to drag Richard in on this again. Good old Count von Rannoch. So what are the reasons why I put him into it? Well, cold rust being one of the available reagents for what we needed to use to cure. One of the best places to find it's Heroes Hollow. So, and that's where we know the Count is. So it just makes sense. Also, and we'll be talking about this. Actually, here I'm just going to talk about it right now. The item is we have an adventurer who gets lost. Right. This is the environmental prompt that shows up by walking into Heroes Hollow. So in this case, it was the adventurer gets lost, and if you help him out, you pick up 10 silver. So why not? So we set him up as the fall guy for delivering the book that traps a bit of experience of good old Richard. Yeah, and I wanted a new face. I didn't want to have Roger Rogerson, our usual adventurer, show up here again. He's been through a lot already. I thought, let's just have somebody else who's just sort of hapless show up. So that pretty much covers the bits and pieces on that. So the other thing is just a little bit of a admitted mistake. In my notes, I had taken note of the fact that we tried to collect old blood, ran out of time, and so did not get it. I included it in anyway. Apparently, I forgot as I was writing the thing, and I don't like to go back and really edit myself afterwards, and so it's like, well. So, oops. Okay, so let's go into what's been written before. And so what's been written before has been written a few times before. So this is all stuff that should be fairly familiar and not really esoteric at all. But you do need to remember that you've written it and you want to be consistent as you carry this stuff forward. So, for instance, Count von Rannoch, he's vampiric necromancer, right? He's up to his necromantic ways, being his vampire self down there. Be consistent in what you're talking about with him. There's the library, so remember that. We've written about Igor extensively. We've been in Heroes Hollow a few times now. It's definitely Sweets' least favorite place to be when she goes to collect reagents, and so we want to keep that in mind as well. So let's now talk about the imagination piece, all the new stuff that we're going to introduce in. So I wanted to have Count von Rannoch feel the effects of loss of experience by taking away his abilities to focus and remember. Since he's going to be a very mental kind of guy, it seemed like that would be the appropriate thing to kind of, sap out. And in doing this and having the book be a trapped item, I also wanted to kind of open up the possibility that it's Igor who was responsible. Now, why might Igor be responsible? Make a couple of assumptions, couple of guesses, and maybe I don't know, not really sure, and that's okay. We don't need to know the answer. This is episodic, right? We can make stuff up on the fly as we go, and it only becomes real when we actually write it down. Until then, it's all speculation, and speculation can be just as much fun as actually reading the actual text. Sometimes more so. Because you find yourself like stopping for a moment, like, is Igor responsible? Where's the butler? The butler always did it. Igor's kind of a butler. Why not? So we have that. And again, tying in the adventurer, who was somehow co-opted or forced or geased or whatever. And geas is a spell where you're told to go and do something and you are impelled to do it. So we have, somehow or other, Igor has maybe arranged this, if it's Igor or one of Richard's enemies, whoever they may be. We don't know. We haven't ever identified anybody, but you got to figure a vampire and a necromancer can probably find a few enemies just lying around and, doing things. So where would the adventurer go? Bringing it back to the adventurer. So after they have done their thing, where would they go? Where would they end up? Well, if Igor had arranged this whole thing, why wouldn't Igor just kill him off? Dispose of the body. It's not like the Not like the necromancer is going to know. Maybe we can assume that Igor didn't have time. He was called away, the count being affected by reading the book, and somehow he has to go in and deal with it. Or maybe the results weren't what he was expecting. Maybe he thought it was going to suck everything away and just leave a hollow shell, or who knows? Who knows? Speculation, we can run rampant with it. Anyways, the adventurer, he just has wandered off into this dark, creepy, smelly place that, we know Sweetwater does not really like it all that much. She's a witch, and she's doing really well keeping her feelings, under wraps and whatnot. So what's this guy going to be doing? Especially if he's just some poor schmo, not even like a real adventurer, right? If he's just sort of like someone who was drinking at the bar one night after work, working the fields, and then he finds himself, in this dungeon. So he's just trying to hide. And the last thing I wanted to mention along this vein is we have that bit where Richard is really applying the whole vampire staring, gazing, that hunter look, right? Because vampires, that's they're gonna like attract you in almost like a snake, right? Prey just get mesmerized, frozen in place as the snake, stares. And so I wanted to have that same type of feeling, but have Mistress Sweetwater be able to resist it and push it back, where she is becoming more and more into her own being, her own self, and she can protect herself well. And the last thing in this imagination piece, in the opening of the story and in the closing of the story, I wanted to have a motif that sort of worked, having it open with the sunset and then having it close with the sunrise, which in some respects is opposite to what you would expect. Normally it's, I'm waking up, there's the sunrise, and then I'm going to fall asleep as the sun sets. This is the other way. There is the necromancer aspect to it, and so we are sort of working on the opposite time zone of sorts, right? It's a necromancer's business hours, a vampire's business hours are 180 degrees out from the rest of the world. So so is our witches, at least on this day. But I wanted to have that tie-in to the sun, so having it set at the beginning and having it rise at the end. And we're going to be talking about that in the Pantser section. Okay, so, which oddly enough brings us to the Pantser section, the discussion of using openings and closings to help make episodes more satisfying. So again, this is just a little bit of a writer's tip. That at least I find it useful, and hopefully you will too. So in this case, I'm talking about having an opening and then having a closing that sort of mirror each other. So we're opening with something, we're kind of opening the box, and then as we close, we're going to close with that same motif. And it gives that sense of satisfying closure. So to actually refer to this directly, so I'm going to take us to the fourth paragraph of the opening. So it did take me a few paragraphs to get to this point. But here we go. So watching the last of the twilight dim, I felt like I'd been part of a daily ceremony, the changing of the guard from day to night. Oddly satisfying in its way, almost as if the desire to do morphs into the desire to rest, right? So we've got this nice explanation being involved in that setting of the sun. And this is not something that's unusual, right? As the sun sets, and for me, the day starts to end. For other people, it's just like, oh, this is when my fun starts to begin. I'm going to go out and party and whatnot. Like me, sun sets, I'm done. Into bed I go. Okay. And so now the closing of paragraph. And this is just the last bit. So, but instead of going to bed, I sat outside and waited. It didn't feel like a long time, but it gave me time to decompress, to process, to wonder, and to eventually watch the sunrise. So here again, we have sort of this little ceremony going on, right? We're decompressing, we're processing, we're allowing all of these things to release out to the rising of the sun. So we have, so I guess, and I just realized it now, it's not even just the sunset and sunrise, but it's also the little ceremony that kind of goes with the closing of the day and then to the opening of the day. One of the difficulties in writing, and in particular writing something that doesn't have an end point, right? So that's why I keep calling these episodes, not chapters, because for me, end point or episodes refers to an openness that doesn't exist within chapters, which feels very closed to me. So it's nice to bring the story back around to where we started. It gives a sense of completion and rereadability. This is something that may not show up in someone's awareness on the first read, but hopefully will be sitting there waiting on the second. And I've also noticed that when I do this, I tend to focus on the opening bit and be more elaborate in my discussion and leave the ending more simple. And I like this because the opening has space, right? We're expanding out. We're sort of increasing our awareness. We're allowing the possibilities to open up in front of us. Whereas the ending is more of a wrap up. We're bringing things back, right? And so when we bring things back, we can do it quicker. We don't need to get all elaborate. We don't need to get all fancy. It just needs to have some motif, and here we go, back in. Right, because the dramatic bits have already occurred. In the opening, we're promising dramatic bits. In the closing, they've already occurred. So we don't need to get elaborate. We don't need to try and overshadow what has occurred. We don't need to overshadow or outdo the dramatic bit. Let that stand as is, and then just close it up in a satisfactory manner. Right? We're just close the box, little bow on top, done. Anyways, I hope you find that helpful and useful in your writing projects. Okay, so that covers everything that I was shooting for within this video. So I'm going to bring us over now to the drawingXpressions haiku. A creative space, holistically supportive. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please. So thank you so much for being a part of this journey, for listening to this episode, and I hope to see you again in another 2 weeks' time. Until then, bye for now.